Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into a topic that's pretty much on everyone's minds these days,
Absolutely.
the U.S. economy.
It's a big one.
But we're not just going to skim the surface, we're going to go deeper.
Absolutely.
Explore how different generations are experiencing this economic moment and also how things like Bitcoin and stable coins,
How do those fit in?
fit into the whole picture.
Exactly.
Our source material for this deep dive is an interview with Joe Carlasare.
Interesting guy.
He's a commercial litigator in the Bitcoin space. And
Oh, wow.
the interview was on Natalie Brunell's YouTube channel, Coin Stories.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Yeah. And Carlasare offers a really interesting perspective.
Definitely. He goes beyond those typical, recession is looming predictions.
Right, right.
And focuses more on, the individual
The
impact.
human impact.
The human impact, yeah.
Right.
Of these broad economic trends.
Exactly. He argues that the U.S. economy is what he calls K-shaped.
Yes.
So help us unpack this K-shaped economy.
Okay.
What exactly does that look like in practice?
So he points out that older generations,
Okay.
particularly those who own assets and benefit from government spending,
Right.
they're generally doing pretty well.
They're doing okay.
Yeah. But younger generations are facing
A very different reality.
totally different reality, yeah.
There.
They're burdened by things like student loan debt. Huge.
Yeah.
And a crazy competitive housing market.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Carlasare actually uses a really interesting anecdote to illustrate this.
Oh, I love anecdotes.
He talks about packed Mexican restaurants
Okay.
with constantly increasing prices.
Yeah, I noticed that last time I was out.
Right. And it illustrates this K-shaped divide perfectly.
Yeah.
Those who are doing well can absorb those price increases without blinking.
Right.
But for those who are struggling,
Yeah.
those rising prices can have a real impact.
Absolutely.
You know,
It's tough.
It's tough to even enjoy a meal out
Yeah.
when you're worried about making rent.
Right.
So where are you seeing this K-shape play out
Mhm.
in your own life or in your community?
It's a really good question.
It's fascinating to think about,
Yeah.
who's being impacted by these trends and how their experiences might differ.
Right, because it's not monolithic.
No, not at all.
And this brings us to another crucial point that Carlasare raises.
Okay.
The idea of a silent depression.
Now this is interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does he mean by
By silent depression.
silent depression?
He's talking about this kind of under-the-radar economic hardship
Okay.
that isn't always captured by those major economic indicators.
Right.
He points to rising credit card debt,
Mm-hmm.
a significant increase in delinquencies,
Oh, wow.
especially in those aged 18 to 39.
That's really concerning.
It is.
Those delinquency numbers are scary.
Yeah. And to further highlight
Yeah.
the societal stress
Ah.
this generation's experiencing, he shares this really sobering statistic.
Okay.
Opioid overdoses now surpass car accidents as a leading cause of death.
Wow.
It is heavy.
That's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of this.
This silent depression.
Silent depression. Have you noticed this trend in your own observations
Oh, yeah.
of how younger generations are navigating the current economic landscape?
Definitely. And one of the things he points to
Mm-hmm.
is the unique challenges this generation faces.
Yeah.
They're graduating with unprecedented levels of student loan debt.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
They're entering a housing market that's often completely out of reach.
Forget about it.
And then on top of that,
Yeah.
they're facing stagnant wages.
It's a triple whammy.
It's a perfect storm
Yeah.
of economic pressures.
It really is. It makes you wonder how these pressures will shape their long-term
Absolutely.
economic prospects, their outlook on the future.
Yeah, their whole worldview, really.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
let's talk about the big elephant in the room.
Oh, boy.
U.S. debt and deficits.
Yes. The topic that always seems to spark intense debate.
It never goes away, right?
Never goes away.
And to Carlasare's credit,
Mm-hmm.
he acknowledges the concerns about rising debt levels,
Yeah.
but he challenges this idea that it inevitably leads to economic collapse.
Right.
He even uses a chart in the interview
Oh, interesting.
to demonstrate the lack of direct correlation between high debt-to-GDP ratios and sovereign debt crises.
I'd like to see that chart.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So he's not saying debt's not a problem.
Right.
But
it's more nuanced than that.
It's not this automatic trigger for a
Right.
crisis.
What's fascinating is that he doesn't dismiss the debt concerns outright.
Right.
He encourages us to focus on the relationship between inflation
Yeah,
and economic growth.
that makes sense.
His argument is that The real danger lies in inflation outpacing growth,
I see.
not just the absolute debt number itself.
It's not just about the size of the debt.
Right.
It's about whether the economy can keep up.
It's a really interesting way to frame it.
It is.
It's not just about how much debt we have,
Yes.
but whether we can grow our way out of it.
Exactly.
So then to further complicate the picture,
Okay.
Carlasare brings up the potential for rapid technological advancements,
Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
particularly in AI.
AI, yeah.
He believes this could lead to an explosion of productivity, potentially reshaping the entire economic equation.
So he's suggesting that AI could be the key
Yeah, it's a bold claim.
to changing the debt narrative.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely...
Could technology actually help us outpace our debt?
It's a possibility worth considering. I mean,
Yeah.
if AI and other emerging technologies can truly unlock new levels of productivity and
Right.
economic growth,
It could fundamentally alter our understanding of how debt impacts a nation's long-term prospects.
it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, it's like rewriting the rules.
Exactly.
Now let's dive into something that's often considered a potential solution to economic woes,
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Carlasare, being deeply involved in the Bitcoin space, sees it as a potential disincentive
Interesting.
to reckless financial behavior.
Okay, so this is a perspective you often hear from
Yeah.
those who advocate for a move away from traditional fiat currencies,
Right. They see Bitcoin as a more
disciplined system.
more honest system.
Honest system, exactly.
Carlasare argues that a Bitcoin-backed banking system
Okay.
would force institutions to face the consequences of their actions.
Because there wouldn't be an option to just print more
Exactly. No more printing.
Bitcoin to bail themselves out.
It's this idea that a hard cap supply of
Yeah.
Bitcoin would introduce a level of accountability that's lacking in the current system.
Makes sense. No more magic money out of thin air.
And that brings up a thought-provoking question for you, dear listener.
Okay.
How do you envision Bitcoin's role evolving in the global financial system?
It's a big question.
Could a more accountable system, as Carlasare suggests,
Yeah.
benefit individual investors?
It's definitely something to ponder
Yeah, food for thought.
as Bitcoin continues to gain traction
For sure.
and challenge that traditional financial order.
Now hold on tight, because we're about to explore something
Okay.
that might seem a little counterintuitive.
Right.
Carlasare's surprisingly bullish stance
Oh, this is interesting.
on stablecoins.
Stablecoins, okay, so this isn't a view you typically associate with
Not usually, no.
a Bitcoin proponent.
Right.
Interesting.
But Carlasare highlights the potential for stablecoins
Okay.
to actually increase demand for U.S. treasuries.
So his reasoning is that stablecoins being pegged to the U.S. dollar
Right.
would require holding significant reserves in U.S. treasuries
Exactly.
to maintain that peg.
So instead of undermining the dollar,
It could actually strengthen it.
that's the argument he's putting forward.
Huh. Fascinating.
He even goes as far as to predict a potential tenfold growth
Wow.
in the stablecoin market.
That's significant.
What kind of impact do you think that level of growth
Yeah.
that's a tough one could have on the global financial system?
That's a lot to unpack.
Would it be a net positive for the U.S. dollar,
Yeah.
or could it create unforeseen challenges?
It's a complex question.
It really is a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, yeah.
And this brings us to another development in the world of digital assets.
Okay.
The Trump administration's crypto executive order
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
and the proposed digital asset stockpile.
A lot of buzz around that.
It definitely sent ripples through the crypto community.
For sure.
But Carlasare injects a bit of caution into the conversation,
Okay.
pointing out that while this executive order is a positive signal,
Right.
it doesn't guarantee any concrete action.
So it's a step in the right direction,
Yeah.
but maybe not a home run.
He also expresses skepticism about the possibility of a Bitcoin Act passing through Congress anytime soon.
Why is he skeptical about that?
Well, he believes there's still significant resistance
I see.
from anti-crypto figures within Congress.
Makes sense. There's definitely still some pushback there.
He thinks they would likely block any such legislation.
So the political landscape is still a major hurdle
Yeah,
for Bitcoin?
even with this growing interest
Interesting.
from institutions and governments.
It seems that way.
It highlights the fact that we can't just look at the technological or economic merits of Bitcoin in isolation.
Right.
We have to consider the political realities as
That's
well.
all connected.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The economy, technology, politics, it's all intertwined.
It's a complex web.
Now let's talk about this digital asset stockpile for a moment.
Okay.
Carlasare emphasizes that it's crucial for this stockpile to be multi-asset,
That makes sense.
not just focused on Bitcoin.
Diversification is key.
He argues that a diversified approach is essential for capturing the full potential of the digital asset space
Not putting all your eggs in one basket.
and mitigating risks
Exactly.
associated with any single asset.
Smart move.
That makes sense, and it raises a fascinating question for you, our listener.
I like this.
If you were tasked with deciding which digital assets
Okay.
to include in a national stockpile,
All right.
what criteria would you use?
That's a good question.
Would you focus on market capitalization,
Yeah.
the underlying technology,
Mm-hmm.
the potential use cases,
Right.
or something else entirely?
It's a thought-provoking exercise.
It really is.
It forces us to think critically
Yeah.
about the evolving role of digital assets in the global economy.
And how we value these assets
Absolutely.
on a national level.
It's a whole new way of thinking about national reserves.
Oh,
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating stuff, and it really does make you think
It does.
about how we evaluate these assets and
Yeah.
prioritize them
On a grand scale.
on a national level.
Yeah. Really interesting.
But before we get too lost in the hypothetical world of digital asset stockpiles,
Okay.
let's take a step back
All right.
and revisit this idea of a silent depression.
Yeah. That one really stuck with me.
It's a term that really stuck with me.
It's powerful.
What are some of the concrete signs or symptoms
It's a silent depression.
of a silent depression that we should be looking out for?
Well, Carlasare points to a few key things.
Okay.
One is this growing reliance on credit to make ends meet,
Yeah.
especially among younger generations.
It's scary.
We're seeing record levels of credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like more and more people are turning to credit
Just to survive.
just to cover basic expenses.
It's like this constant juggling act.
Exactly.
Stay afloat.
Just to keep your head above water.
And then there's the issue of underemployment.
Right.
Many young people are stuck in jobs that don't fully utilize their skills.
Yeah.
Or education.
It's frustrating.
They're working, but they're not earning enough to get ahead, let alone achieve the same level of financial security as previous generations.
It's like they're running in place.
It's like this undercurrent of frustration and disillusionment.
Absolutely.
They're working hard,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem to be translating into tangible progress.
It's demoralizing.
And that can be incredibly demoralizing.
Absolutely. And Carlasare argues that this silent depression isn't just an economic phenomenon.
Oh, it goes deeper than that.
It has real social and psychological consequences.
Wow.
He points to the rising rates of mental health issues,
Yeah.
substance abuse,
It's a crisis.
and even declining birth rates.
As potential indicators of this deeper societal malaise.
It's like a canary in the coal mine.
It paints a pretty bleak picture, but is there anything we can do to address this?
That's the big question.
It feels like such a complex, multifaceted issue.
It is, but Carlasare does offer some potential solutions.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the most interesting is this idea that we need to rethink our approach
Okay.
to education and job training. He argues that we need to better equip young people with the skills they need
Right.
to succeed in a rapidly changing economy
Yeah, one that's increasingly driven by technology.
by technology and automation.
Right, so it's not just about getting a degree anymore.
It's not enough.
It's about ensuring that the education system is aligned
Yeah,
with the demands of the job market.
exactly. The skills need to match the jobs that are actually out there.
And Carlasare also emphasizes the need for policies that promote entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He believes that creating an environment where people can start and grow businesses is crucial for fostering economic opportunity
Right.
and upward mobility.
It's about empowering people to create their own paths to success.
Rather than relying solely on traditional employment models.
Exactly. There needs to be more than one way to get ahead.
Now let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that might seem a bit technical, but it's actually quite relevant to our discussion of the U.S. economy.
All ears.
Carlasare brings up the challenges faced by Scott Bessent,
Scott Bessent.
the incoming Treasury Secretary.
Okay.
Apparently, he inherited a situation
Uh-oh.
where his predecessor, Janet Yellen,
Yeah.
had relied heavily on issuing short-term debt.
Short-term debt. Okay.
Why is that a problem?
Well, Carlasare had previously criticized this approach,
Oh, really?
arguing that it could lead to a tricky situation down the line.
I see. So it's kind of like
It's like loading up on those short-term bills while
yeah,
neglecting the longer-term bonds.
kicking the can down the road, so to speak.
In a way, yes.
And it raises the question of whether this approach was driven by a desire to keep interest rates low,
It makes you wonder.
perhaps to boost the economy in an election year,
Yeah, there's always a political angle.
or if there were other factors at play.
Who knows what goes on behind closed doors?
It's a fascinating insight into the complexities of managing a nation's finances.
Yeah.
What would you do if you were in Besant's shoes?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Would you continue down the same path?
Yeah.
Or would you try to shift the balance
It's a tough call.
toward longer-term debt?
There are pros and cons to both approaches.
Right.
On the one hand, issuing more long-term debt could help lock in those lower interest rates for a longer period of time.
Okay.
But on the other hand, it could also make it more difficult to manage that debt burden
Right.
if interest rates start to rise in the future.
It's a balancing act.
It's a delicate balancing act, yeah.
It's a tough job.
It is, no doubt.
Now let's circle back to Bitcoin for a moment.
Okay.
There's been a lot of buzz about the potential for the U.S. government to hold Bitcoin
I've heard that.
as a strategic asset.
Interesting idea.
But Carlasare actually throws some cold water on that idea.
Oh, really?
He believes that if a Bitcoin Act
Okay.
were to actually go before Congress,
Yeah.
it would likely be dead on arrival.
Wow, that's a pretty pessimistic outlook.
He bases this assessment on the significant resistance he sees from anti-crypto figures within Congress.
I see. So even with all the buzz,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of opposition.
He believes they would do everything in their power to block any legislation that would give Bitcoin official recognition.
Or legitimacy.
So even with growing institutional and even government interest in Bitcoin,
Yeah,
there's still this significant political hurdle to overcome.
it seems so.
And it highlights the fact that we can't just look at the technological
Right.
or economic merits of Bitcoin in isolation.
There's a bigger picture.
We have to consider the political realities as well.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The economy, technology, politics, it's all intertwined.
It's a complex web.
And that brings us back to Carlasare's point about the importance of understanding the individual impact of these larger forces.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost.
It's easy to get lost in the abstract discussions
It's like
of economic data and policy debates.
But we have to remember, there are real people
Real people
behind those numbers.
whose lives are directly affected by the decisions that are made.
Exactly. It's not just theory.
It's about grounding these conversations in the lived experiences of everyday people.
Humanizing the data.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Carlasare is surprisingly bullish on stablecoins,
Right, yeah.
but he also brings up some potential concerns, right?
He does. He points out that stablecoins are still largely unregulated
Oh, that's a big one.
and that there are concerns about their potential impact on financial stability.
Makes sense.
He's particularly worried about the risk of a run on a stablecoin,
Oh, yeah.
where people lose confidence in its value and rush to redeem it for dollars.
Yeah, like a bank run.
Exactly, which could trigger a wider financial panic.
That's a valid concern.
It is.
And it highlights the need for thoughtful regulation in this space.
Absolutely, something that Carlasare repeatedly emphasizes.
He seems to be walking a fine line
Yeah.
between embracing the potential of these new technologies
I guess.
and acknowledging the potential risks they pose.
The caution.
He is, and I think that's a responsible approach.
I agree.
We shouldn't shy away from exploring the possibilities of these new technologies.
Right, we got to be open to innovation.
But we also need to proceed with caution.
Definitely.
Be mindful of the potential unintended consequences.
The balancing act.
It's about finding that balance between innovation and responsibility.
I like that.
And it's also about recognizing that there are different perspectives on these issues,
That's
for
great.
different viewpoints that are worth considering.
Absolutely. No one has all the answers.
And one of the things I appreciate about Carlasare's perspective is that he doesn't shy away from acknowledging the complexities
Right.
and the uncertainties surrounding these topics.
He's honest about what we don't know,
He doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
which is refreshing.
but he encourages us to ask tough questions
Yeah.
and to engage in thoughtful debate.
To really grapple with the issues.
He seems to be more interested in fostering critical thinking
I think you're right.
than in pushing any particular agenda.
He wants us to think for ourselves.
And I think that's a valuable approach.
Absolutely.
Especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded
Oh, yeah.
with information and opinions.
Information overload.
It's about stepping back.
Yeah.
Taking a deep breath.
And really
engaging with the ideas.
with the substance.
And the arguments.
Even if they challenge our preconceived notions.
Right, being open to new perspectives.
That's what makes this deep dive so rewarding.
It is.
We're not just summarizing information.
You're exploring.
We're exploring different perspectives.
Wrestling with complex ideas.
Expanding our understanding of the world around us.
Now, going back to this idea of a digital assets stockpile,
Okay.
which we touched on earlier,
Mm.
what are some of the key considerations that would go into deciding which digital assets should be included?
Well, I think one of the most important factors would be the asset's overall security. And resilience.
You'd want to choose assets that have a proven track record
Right.
of stability
Stability is key.
and are resistant to hacking or manipulation.
You don't want something that's going to fall apart.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want to put all your eggs in a basket.
Right.
That could easily be compromised.
Exactly. Got to spread the risk.
And then there's the issue of liquidity.
Okay. Yeah.
You'd want to choose assets that can be easily bought and sold so that the government could access them quickly if needed.
So assets with a high trading volume and a well-established market infrastructure.
And of course, you'd also want to consider the asset's potential for growth and appreciation.
Right. You want something that's going to hold its value.
You'd want to choose assets that are likely to hold their value over the long term.
Or even increase in value.
Or even increase in value so that the stockpile would serve as a valuable investment
Exactly.
to the nation.
It's like a national savings account.
So it's a balancing act between security, liquidity, and growth potential.
It's a lot to juggle.
It's a lot to juggle, and I think it's important to note that this is still a very new and evolving area.
Definitely.
There's no clear consensus on which digital assets are best suited for a national stockpile.
It's an open question.
There are a lot of different opinions out there.
A lot of debate, yeah.
It's a fascinating debate.
It is.
And one that's likely to continue for some time.
I think so.
But speaking of debate, let's delve into another area where Carlasare offers some thought-provoking insights.
Are you ready?
The intersection of economics and politics.
Oh, interesting.
He actually talks about how younger generations are increasingly drawn to figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Interesting.
People who represent a break from traditional institutions and a willingness to shake things up.
I could see that.
It's a really interesting observation.
It is.
And I think it speaks to this growing sense of disillusionment with the status quo.
With how things are.
Especially among those who feel like the system isn't working for them.
It's like they're looking for something different.
Yeah, a different way.
A new approach.
Someone who's willing to challenge the established order. Someone who offers a different vision for the future.
A fresh perspective.
And it's important to understand the underlying drivers of these trends.
Absolutely.
It's not just about personalities or political ideologies.
It's deeper than that.
It's about deeper societal shifts and anxieties.
Like a cultural undercurrent.
It's about connecting the dots between economic realities, cultural trends,
and the political landscape.
Exactly.
It's all intertwined.
And I think Carlasare's insights provide a valuable framework
I agree.
for understanding these complex dynamics.
He helps connect the dots.
He encourages us to look beyond the surface and to delve into the deeper forces that are shaping our world.
To think critically.
He's challenging us to think critically and to connect the dots.
In a way that few others are doing.
Now, as we approach the end of our deep dive, let's revisit some of the key themes that have emerged from our exploration of Carlasare's perspective.
What stood out to you?
Well, one of the most striking themes is this idea that the economy is not a monolithic entity.
The complex system.
It's a complex system with different parts moving in different directions.
Absolutely.
And it's crucial to understand how these different parts interact and impact each other.
It's like a giant machine with all these moving parts.
And it's also crucial to understand how those interactions impact real people. Different generations. Different communities,
We can't forget about the human element.
And then there's this idea that we're living through a time of profound technological disruption.
It's changing everything. Technologies like AI and blockchain are transforming industries and creating new possibilities.
It's a whole new world out there.
But they're also creating new challenges.
And uncertainties.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is, and it's up to us to navigate these changes thoughtfully and responsibly.
We need to be mindful of the potential benefits of these technologies,
Yeah.
but also the potential risks.
Absolutely, and we need to be willing to adapt
Yeah.
and evolve as the landscape continues to shift beneath our feet.
It's a constant process of learning and adapting.
Now, one of the things that Carlasare stresses throughout the interview is the importance of focusing on individual impacts and real-world consequences.
Rather than getting lost in that abstract economic data.
It's about grounding these discussions in the lived experiences of everyday people.
Exactly. Bringing it back down to earth.
Humanizing the data.
Humanizing the data, yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the theoretical when discussing these topics.
I know, right? It's like we're talking about numbers on a spreadsheet.
But you're right, it's the real-world impacts that matter most.
Absolutely.
And it's those individual impacts that Carlasare really emphasizes.
Yeah.
Urging us to connect the dots between those big trends and what we see happening around us.
Like, look out your window, what do you see?
I mean, we talked about this silent depression earlier.
Right.
What are some concrete signs that you've observed that might point to this phenomenon?
That's a good question.
Being more than just an abstract concept.
I think one of the most tangible signs is the rise of the gig economy.
Gig economy, yeah.
More and more people, especially young people, are turning to freelance work and short-term gigs.
To make ends meet.
To make ends meet, exactly.
And while there's a certain appeal to the flexibility and autonomy of gig work.
Sure, you're your own boss.
It often comes with a lack of benefits.
Right.
Job security.
And a steady income.
That can contribute to this sense of financial precarity that Carlasare talks about.
It's like a trade-off.
It's like the traditional career ladder has been replaced with this kind of unstable jungle gym.
I like that analogy. Yeah, it's less stable.
And another sign is the increasing difficulty for young people to achieve traditional milestones of adulthood.
Like what kind of milestones?
Like buying a home or starting a family.
Oh, yeah, those are big ones.
The soaring cost of housing in many areas makes homeownership a distant dream for many.
For sure, it's out of reach for a lot of people.
And the economic pressures they face often lead to delaying or foregoing starting families.
It's tough to plan for the future.
It's like the traditional markers of success and stability are becoming increasingly out of reach.
It creates this sense of uncertainty and anxiety.
Exactly. And this can lead to a sense of frustration and disillusionment.
Absolutely.
Which can manifest in various ways.
From social unrest to a decline in civic engagement.
It's a reminder that economic trends don't just impact our wallets.
Right.
They shape our entire outlook on life.
Our worldview.
And our place in society. It's all connected.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something Carlasare brings up that really caught my attention.
Okay, I'm listening.
The idea that younger generations seem less interested in traditional investment vehicles.
Like stocks and bonds.
Like stocks and bonds, and are gravitating towards alternative assets like cryptocurrencies.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
It's an interesting trend, and I think it speaks to a generational shift.
A generational shift, okay.
In how people view money, risk, and the future of finance.
So younger generations have grown up in a world of rapid technological change.
Yeah, they've seen it all.
And financial instability.
The 2008 financial crisis.
Right, they've witnessed that firsthand.
They've seen the rise of cryptocurrency.
It's part of their reality.
And they're more skeptical of traditional institutions and systems.
Makes sense. They've seen those systems fail.
It's like they're looking for something different.
Yeah.
Something that aligns more with their values and their vision of the future.
A system they can believe in. And they're more comfortable with taking on risk and embracing new technologies.
They're not afraid of the unknown?
They see the potential for cryptocurrencies to disrupt the traditional financial system and create a more equitable and transparent financial landscape.
It's a vision for a better future.
It's almost like a form of rebellion against the established order.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's important for us to understand these motivations and perspectives.
Absolutely.
Even if we don't necessarily agree with them.
We need to listen to what they're saying.
Because they're shaping the future of finance and the broader economy.
They're the ones who are going to inherit this system.
Now, before we wrap up, let's circle back to one last point that Carlasare emphasizes throughout the interview.
Okay.
The importance of education.
Education, yeah, that's crucial.
He repeatedly stresses the need for financial literacy and education, particularly for younger generations.
Makes sense. They need the tools to navigate this complex world.
He argues that in a world of increasingly complex financial instruments,
yeah, it's overwhelming.
And systems,
It's hard to keep up.
It's crucial for individuals to have a solid understanding of how money works.
The basic?
How to manage their finances responsibly and how to make informed investment decisions.
It's about empowering people.
He seems to be advocating for a kind of financial empowerment movement.
I like that.
Giving people the tools and knowledge they need to navigate this complex landscape.
And take control of their financial futures.
And I think that's a powerful message.
It is. It's about giving people agency.
Because ultimately, financial literacy is about more than just understanding money.
It's about understanding power.
It's about understanding power, agency,
Yeah.
and the ability to shape one's own destiny.
It's about taking control of your life.
It's about giving people the tools they need to not just survive,
Right.
but to thrive in this ever-changing world.
To build a better future for themselves.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the U.S. economy and the insights of Joe Carlasare,
It's been a fascinating conversation.
we want to leave you, our listener, with this final thought.
Okay, hit me with it.
Don't be a passive observer.
Get involved.
Engage with these ideas.
Yeah.
Explore different perspectives.
He's learning.
And seek out the knowledge and skills you need
Yeah.
to navigate this complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
The world's not going to wait for us to catch up.
Because the future of the economy is not something that happens to us.
We have a role to play.
It's something we create together.
It's a collective effort.
It's about taking action, right? Not just sitting on the sidelines and watching things happen.
Exactly. We all have a part to play in shaping the future.
And it's those individual impacts, those real-world consequences that Carlasare really wants us to focus on.
He's urging us to connect the dots between those big trends and what we see happening in our own lives and communities.
We talked about this silent depression earlier.
Yeah, it's a powerful term.
What are some, concrete signs that you've observed that might point to this phenomenon being more than just, an abstract concept?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the rise of the gig economy.
The gig economy, yeah.
More and more people, especially young people, are turning to freelance work and short-term gigs.
Yeah, to make ends meet.
Just to get by.
And while gig work has its appeal, right?
Sure, flexibility, you're your own boss.
It often comes with a lack of benefits, job security, a steady income.
It can be really unpredictable.
And that can contribute to this sense of financial precarity.
Absolutely.
That Carlasare talks about.
It's like this constant hustle.
It's like the traditional career ladder has been replaced with this kind of unstable jungle gym.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Less security, less stability.
And another sign of notice is the increasing difficulty for young people to achieve traditional milestones of adulthood.
Like, what do you mean?
Like buying a home, starting a family.
Right, those big life events.
The soaring cost of housing makes home ownership a distant dream for many.
Oh, yeah, it's out of reach for so many people.
And then the economic pressures they face often lead to delaying or foregoing starting families.
Pushing those plans further and further out.
It's like those traditional markers of success and stability are becoming increasingly out of reach.
It's shifting the definition of what it means to be an adult.
And I think that can lead to a sense of frustration, disillusionment.
Absolutely. It impacts how people see their place in the world.
Which can manifest in various ways: social unrest, a decline in civic engagement.
It's a reminder that economic trends don't just impact our wallets, right?
No, not at all.
They shape our entire outlook on life and our place in society.
It affects everything.
Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about something Carlasare brings up that really caught my attention.
All right, what's that?
This idea that younger generations seem less interested in traditional investment vehicles.
Like stocks and bonds.
Yeah, stocks, bonds, the old standbys.
And they're more into alternative assets like crypto.
Exactly. They're looking beyond the traditional markets.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
It's an interesting trend, and I think it speaks to a generational shift.
Okay.
In how people view money, risk, the future of finance.
So these younger generations, they've grown up in a different world.
A world of rapid technological change.
Yeah.
Financial instability.
They've seen the system fail.
They witnessed the 2008 financial crisis.
Right, that had a huge impact.
They've seen the rise of cryptocurrencies.
All they've ever known.
And they're more skeptical of traditional institutions.
Yeah, they don't trust the old guard.
and system.
They're looking for something new, something better.
It's like they're looking for something different, something that aligns more with their values.
And their vision of the future.
And they're more comfortable taking on risk.
They're not afraid to try new things.
Embracing new technologies.
They're digital natives.
They see the potential for cryptocurrencies to disrupt the traditional financial system.
To level the playing field.
Create a more equitable and transparent financial landscape.
It's a vision of a more democratic system.
It's almost like a form of rebellion against the established order.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's important for us to understand these motivations and perspectives.
Even if we don't agree with them.
Even if we don't agree, we need to listen.
To understand where they're coming from.
Because they're shaping the future of finance and the broader economy.
They're the future.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive,
okay,
let's circle back to one last point that Carlasare emphasizes.
What's that?
The importance of education.
Education, yeah. It's fundamental.
She repeatedly stresses the need for financial literacy.
Especially for younger generations.
He argues that in a world of increasingly complex financial instruments and systems,
yeah, it's a jungle out there.
It's crucial for individuals to have a solid understanding of how money works,
the basics,
how to manage their finances responsibly,
to make smart decisions,
and how to make informed investment decisions.
To be in control of their financial lives.
He seems to be advocating for a kind of financial empowerment movement.
I like that.
Giving people the tools and knowledge they need to navigate this complex landscape.
And take control of their financial futures.
And I think that's a powerful message.
It's about empowering people.
Because ultimately, financial literacy is about more than just understanding money.
It's about so much more.
It's about understanding power, agency, the ability to shape one's own destiny.
It's about freedom.
It's about giving people the tools they need, not just to survive,
right,
but to thrive.
To create a better future.
In this ever-changing world.
It's an important message.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the U.S. economy and the insights of Joe Carlasare,
it's been a great discussion.
We want to leave you, our listener, with this final thought. Don't be a passive observer.
Get involved.
Engage with these ideas, explore different perspectives, seek out the knowledge and skills you need to navigate this complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
The world is changing fast.
Yeah, because the future of the economy is not something that just happens to us.
We have a say.
It's something we create together.
We're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.